quick sound check. Let me do that again. I forgot my mic. We'll call the meeting to order at 5:32 for September 12th, 2022. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is school committee introductions. I'll start with Assistant Superintendent Paquette.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Bruce Damon, Ward 1.
Megan Parks at large.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3. Ashley Medina, Ward 5.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Paul Bopelant, Ward 7.
Linda Scott, City Council Rep.
And the Ward 4 rep, Tanya Whitlow, is excused. She was ill tonight. The third item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items that members want to have removed from the consent agenda? If there is no objection, the consent agenda would be adjusted or approved. Do I see anything that needs to be removed? Consent agenda is adopted as presented. Next item on the agenda is public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes now and on agenda items and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, and or student issues should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee, be brief, non-repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and affiliation to Lewiston Public Schools. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the committee? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section. Agenda item number 5 is to recognize Lewiston Public School staff. That is the superintendent.
I'll start this evening's recognition, but I think there may be some others that want to speak to it also, or at least I'll invite them to. But you see coming in to us, Fatuma Hassan, who recently broke her ankle, running to get paperwork for an onboarding. Kidding, it was at home. But Fatuma came on as the assistant HR director not too long before HR director Kim Brown stepped away. And in all the panic that we had in our minds of how is this going to go, all the things that need to be done, and there's a whole team there, and I don't want to take anything away from others on the team, but there are also items that we can't talk about in public session because of the need for privacy, some legal matters, various other things. And from day-to-day operations to success with some of those really hard situations that we're not able to just talk about openly, Fatuma was there for all of it. She has worked long hours. She has worked unbelievably efficiently. Some people work long hours because it's just, there's a lot to do and they may or may not be very efficient. Fatuma is incredibly efficient. Her work production has not slowed down at all. I got a picture the other day that I probably could share, but I don't want to, but I'll explain it. Fatuma has a station set up at her home because prior to her having her walking device and her formal cast, because once they figured out all the details of the injury, she had her leg up on a table and she had 2 screens. And I could tell you from my inbox and from work production in the office, it was like nothing had happened. But what had happened is she broke her ankle pretty severely. And if you look at her now, when she was asked if she'd be available tonight, because we had actually thought about doing this prior to her injury, Her answer was, yeah, of course, I'll be there. So I think it just speaks for Fatuma. We know her, we love her, we trust her, but the work that she does is really second to none. So we want to take a chance tonight to recognize her for that. And I didn't know if Susanna or Bill would like to add to a little bit of what we said here, or Karen.
I'm not IT. Um, I've been here close to coming up on 4 months now, and Fatuma was there and ready when I started, and she has been fabulous. Anything and everything that I've asked, I came into kind of the middle of some pretty crazy things that were happening. She had a handle on it. She ran with it. She's kept me informed and helped me get up to speed in my position. Integral part of our team. And it's funny because she came to me last Friday and said, I feel really bad because I was out the whole week with my ankle and I feel like I let everyone kind of down. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because it was really like she was still in the office. So she definitely goes above and beyond. And I just want to personally say thank you. I really appreciate your support, and you've helped make our team successful.
So Fatuma and I started in Dingley about the same time, and had to get used to all those nuances of working in Dingley. But when our former HR director Kim Brown was out on maternity leave and then ultimately left us, Fatuma jumped right in, and she had only been on the job for about 3 months at that time, and just took everything in stride, did a fantastic job, gave everything thought. And I'll tell you, one of the brightest things of my day is she always walks by my office. Now I can hear her coming with all of her contraptions, but she'll just stop and say, how's it going today? And, we check in, and then, we may be dealing with a pretty difficult situation, but brings a smile to it, brings a positive piece to our workforce and into the Dingley building. So I'm just thrilled that we've crossed paths.
I just want to add that in that whole process, she also earned her master's degree. And so she's not just highly qualified and highly efficient. She's now master's level, highly qualified and really efficient. So Fatuma, I'm going to bring you a certificate of appreciation, but really just from the committee and Lewiston Public Schools as a whole, just want to say thank you.
I don't think you have to get up.
Sue wants to take a picture, just gonna follow. Thank you for that. Wait, take a-
Next item, number 6 on the agenda, is to receive an update on transportation. Mr. Superintendent.
It's an update. It's not a surprise. I think people know, and we tried to share what we could in advance so people could arrange whatever rides they could. This afternoon, I found out about another bus driver who was given their notice to go to a different district for various reasons, one of them being benefits. Hudson doesn't offer full benefits like some other districts do. So we're working through it. Karen, myself, Bill, Sue, we've all been drivers of vans and tried to help students get to where they need to be. So we continue to do everything we can. The rides have been, or the runs have been collapsed as far as they can. We don't see any other way to collapse any of the runs. We have, as you know, but just to say publicly, We did have two buses through Hudson that were driving to St. Dom's. Those have been repurposed to serve Lewiston Public School students. And again, thinking of that piece of how do we justify the greatest good and trying to make sure we get as many students to school as we can. We've never had to cross this bridge before, but knowing that we estimated, looking through our rolls, 275 students were not getting a ride because of the buses going to St. Dom's, and to no fault of their own, they have about 40 students that get transported by these buses, and it just got impossible to justify why we keep calling our own families, Lewiston Public School students and their families, to say that they don't have a ride when others did. And so not an easy decision, but we did grab those buses. We have two people in training at different spots in their training. If all goes well with one of the candidates, they'll be online around mid-October, we believe. So that's one. One of today's delays was we were waiting on a piece of paper from a medical office saying that, yes, this person is in fact medically able to drive. We anticipate that person being on the road tomorrow. But it's challenging right now. We are short. We've talked to the Department of Ed. We've talked to Hudson. We've talked to their regional and beyond that management to see if there's anything else they can do to pull from other areas for resources. The reality is the driver shortage is across the board, and borrowing from somewhere else, which has happened in the past. They've sent people out from Connecticut, things like that. There's just no one available. So we'll continue to market and sell things to whoever we can. Karen and I were sharing information with one of the students we picked up, his mother's boyfriend, who said, hey, I have a CDL. So we're like giving him information about where to apply for a job and, reminding him that we're looking for someone right now. And he said, well, I would drive this group of kids, but I don't want a big bus. I said, I need you to call. And so we can connect those dots and see if it's a viable option. Bill and I don't know how this unfolded, but we were talking in the lobby about drivers, and there was a nutrition staff coming to meet with HR who said, hey, I get out of work at 1. If you need someone just in the afternoons, I would pick up some extra hours. So that person's information's already been submitted to see if that's at least some help. We have offered to outside organizations, and I don't have all this logistically figured out if they would say yes, but some of these special purpose schools, like the one we were driving to last week in Westbrook, they have staff there, obviously, who know these students. But we offered a kind of a proposal to say, we would let you take 2 of our vans and pick up these students. We'll pay you in the morning. You can drive down to your workplace, bring the kids with you, come back with the vans, drop the kids off and, park it on our school grounds, that kind of thing. And try to figure out, could we pay their staff to make these runs in the morning before their job, and then back home. If they live in this general area, they have to make that drive anyway. So again, we put it out there. We're trying to be as creative as we can be. Hudson, of course, needs certain licenses, but to drive the vans, you just need a valid driver's license and some light student safety training. So it's not as complicated for the vans, but again, we're trying to get as creative as we can. We will lose a driver Friday after this coming, so the 23rd. And we had someone show up last week to take a job somewhere else and not even finish the day. They got a call about the new job offer, and they came in and turned their keys in and said, I got another job.
Ms. Hurd.
Thank you. So I know we have a lot of local like construction companies that have employees that have CDLs that maybe just need that like education piece. And they're in the season where they're going to start laying off some of their workers because they don't maybe have work for them in the winter. And some of them also don't, if they're on, they don't actually work unless there's snow to be plowed. So is it possible to maybe reach out to like our local companies like St. Laurent, Gendron, those type of companies, and see if they'd be willing to do like a partnership or something with us maybe?
Yeah, I like that idea. Actually, I hadn't thought of that. I think that's a good one. The other thing I want to say publicly, and I don't know who's watching, who's not, but to spread the word, we're willing to do split shifts. If you want to just drive in the morning and we could find someone to do the afternoon, let's talk. If you want to do a couple of days a week, but you don't want to do certain other days, we're willing to hear what everybody has for ideas, but I will reach out about that because it's a good idea. It might get us through some part of the year.
Mr. Bopala.
Thank you. Superintendent, how long have we been providing transportation to St. Dom students?
So in my research, it's not necessarily to St. Don's, but to parochial schools since
Parochial.
1961. There was a local referendum that our voters here did vote and support and enact an appropriation to where the city actually pays for the transportation, and it's elementary only. But for years, we've had the capacity to also bus the high school students. And so right now we're not busing any of them with current Hudson buses.
And I'll ask the loaded question here. What was the pushback from St. Dom's? How did they react?
I think they understand it, and I think they appreciated that I tried to call ahead before I made it a public thing. It puts them in a hardship too, and I can appreciate that. They were cordial, but it puts them in a hardship, and I think everybody appreciates the cause, and I think the numbers speak for themselves. You know, pushing 300 kids here that don't have a ride to school. I would argue that our kids are more vulnerable and they need to be in school. They have less resources than many of the students who go to St. Dom's. So I think that that's how we arrived at the decision.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. So I was going to ask the same questions that Mr. Beauplan had asked. That referendum question, was that, I'm just thinking logistics here. If something is voted on by referendum by the community, can that just be changed? And I'm not trying to cause a problem or say that, because I understand what your decision was, but I just don't want to do anything that could get us in trouble later on.
Yeah, so I think with the driver shortage, if we're calling and canceling, well, essentially what that decision did was we're canceling those runs instead of 2 here. And so in the grand scheme, it's the lesser of an impact from our perspective. But the charter language that was voted on was that the city would pay for the transportation. It doesn't guarantee it. It doesn't say by whom. And so there's other options out there. And I know that one of the things that I had shared, and I will leave businesses out of it just because I don't think it's appropriate, but we've investigated and called other organizations that might be able to help with some of this transportation. And the prices are 3, 4, sometimes 5 times more expensive per run. And it's just not really feasible. And so when I shared that idea with our colleagues across the river, they already knew that there was just no way they could afford it. So I do think that pricing is something that we've been very curious about in multiple realms, up to and including I've shared some thoughts with the appropriate folks at the Department of Education. We're seeing some pricing on things that, in my opinion, don't add up. And I think when we can't bring kids to school, it's worth looking in every corner.
If I may, in the same line of comments from Member Hurd, I was thinking possibly United Ambulance. So I know that United Ambulance had done a presentation at the beginning of the year with the city council. And one of the things that they had mentioned was that they were doing a lot less medical transportation for folks because of COVID and other things that had happened. And some of that had changed around as far as appointments. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't possibly reach out to them as well, that maybe they have available drivers for, especially like the buses and stuff. I mean, the vans and stuff like that. And I would also suggest possibly reaching out to Shanna Cox at the Chamber of Commerce to see if she can facilitate some of those conversations with some of these construction companies. Like you said, anything that we can do, let's think outside the box here to try to get this busing. Thank you.
I just want to add, for full disclosure, it's not just during the day. We have after school programs that are not going to have busing. So 21st Century and some of those, boost type programs that kids and families have said have been so helpful, we're not going to have rides for all of them. Our athletes and some other clubs that are in competitions, right now, the buses are either coming too late or not able to come at all. And it's day to day right now. And I think that that's very problematic. So we're looking at how we can train any in-house staff that are interested to get themselves certified so that they could drive a school bus, even if they worked for Hudson in the moment, or if we go that route, you know, do we acquire the different vehicles here? But some teachers who might go to the students' games anyway might be willing to jump on a bus and be like, I'll drive and, you know, bring the students to and from, and yeah, so we're open to ideas. Thank you for those. Those are helpful.
Ms. Parks.
I'm sure there's probably some level of overlap of scheduling, but I know that most of the City of Lewiston Public Works employees are all CDL certified also for driving plows and that kind of stuff. So if I maybe coordinate with the city and see if there's some availability for them as well.
Anyone else with a good suggestion?
Just one last thing for me, I think, unless there's a question. I've been thinking more and more about our multi-year contract with Hudson. They're not able to fulfill the service contract that we have signed. I don't know what a plan B is because we don't have a fleet. But I know that if we did, we would be looking at, to be competitive, higher wages and benefits that would include insurance that currently is not offered. My rough estimation, just sitting here, when you look at the income projected on the wages we're seeing today and benefits, that contract would have to double, to say the least.
It seems.
As I recall, there was a grant put in for some electric buses. Do we know anything about that?
I just know that it was submitted and in a collaborative effort with Hudson. Alyssa Roman, our transportation and nutrition director, worked with them on that, and I was following up with her, and it had been submitted. I don't know any results of it yet. Yeah.
Ms. Parks.
This might be a really stupid question, but is there any way to like subcontract the drivers as so that they're also Lewiston Public School employees so that we could offer them insurance?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could. I'd want to bring it back before you. I mean, insurance for staff can, on the low end, could be as much as $20,000 per person. And on the high end, you know, with a full family, could be even more expensive as far as the district cost, depending on what's offered and what's agreed to. But it could be a significant cost for those benefits.
Anyone else? Comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 7 is to receive and potentially vote on a field trip request to Casco Bay in Freeport Town Wharf. Freeport?
So we have Mr. Walker, who's going to present. These are trips that have happened before, and there's actually, I want to just note, there's a couple of additions. If you scroll the PDF in your packet, Cheryl was off today, and so the amended agenda piece kind of missed. There's a trip that we could revisit to Japan, which has nothing to do with Corey, but that advisor.
We'll go fishing in Japan. I'm off to that.
But these are the kinds of trips that Corey has facilitated multiple years in a row, but involves water. So we wanted to make sure that it was in front of you to at least have a look at the trip.
Yeah, so thanks for your time, Captain Corey Walker. Like Mr. Langley said, I have a captain's license from the Coast Guard. I have a excursion company that I do fishing charters and stuff with in the summer and whatnot. So I teach earth system science to the freshmen and a main outdoors class. And a lot of the main outdoors class is getting them outdoors, and we do a lot of chart work. We do a lot of species identification. We do map and compass and stuff like that. So I just barrage these guys with a few different field trips, like hiking Tumbledown Mountain, Douglas Mountain, doing some of those mountain things. And then the other trips to Peaks Island, we'd be going out, we'd get on a ferry in Portland. We take the ferry out, we rent bikes, and then we do a circumnavigation around the island. I don't know if anybody's been to Peaks, but there's an old battery out there that you can kind of go in and hike around in. It's really neat little island to check out. We might bring fishing poles, I don't know. But so we do that. That's October 6th, I believe. And then the striper fishing. And that day we would leave around 8 o'clock. We'd get on the ferry at 9. And then the return ferry, I believe, is around 12:45 and something like that. So we'd be getting back right around 2 o'clock. And then the 19th of September, I want to bring 6 students for an excursion on my boat. Usually these excursions are like in the range of $500 or $600 per excursion, and I'm doing it for $10 a student, just really for gas. But again, we're going to do a lot of chart work. I got a grant a few years ago to make a bunch of fishing poles and lures and stuff like that. So most of the fishing poles and lures we'll be using out on the boat are the ones that the students actually will be making themselves and stuff like that. So, you know, it's putting the practice in action, really. You know, it's getting the students out there, and it's what I think when Jake and I were talking about forming this class, what it was all about. And you know, a lot of the students haven't been out of the town. A lot of students definitely haven't been near the water. And as far as, you know, safety concerns go, I am very, very safety conscious on my own boat. I've done about 80 charters this summer. I haven't had one incident in the 5 years I've been running charters. You know, I'm fully certified as far as first aid and everything go. And so I'm very qualified to bring, you know, the students out there. As far as the Peaks Island trip, we'll be getting on a public ferry, which runs every hour back and forth. And you know, they're fully certified as far as I know too. And then we're leaving right from the ferry station in Portland. I don't know if anybody's been there, but everybody should go there. It's a great place. So any questions, anybody?
Ms. Bowden?
Thank you. When the students are on your boat that you're chartering, will they be wearing life jackets?
Coast Guard says on 12 and under, or 10 and under, you have to wear a life jacket by law. You don't, you know, these students are old enough not to. You know, if the parents said, I really want my daughter or son, or if you all said they need to wear them, then I tell them they need to wear them. I think the Coast Guard regulations are, you know, fair enough to go by, and I don't think, you know, they need to. I've had many, you know, people on, older people, younger people, had 2.5-year-olds and up to 95-year-olds on the boat. You know, that's really the parents' decision. I think it's, you know, if your decision, yes or no, to let us go. But, you know, I've followed the line of the law as far as the Coast Guard goes. And, you know, I don't mess around out there as far as all that goes. And so, you know, these kids will go out and they'll have probably a life-changing experience, and they're going to come back safe and sound, and hopefully have something to remember.
So I've been on your boat, but I believe you have equipment on the boat if you need to throw out to people and to help them get back in the boat, all of that stuff.
Yeah, we have
If they gotta-
we have, you know, by law, you have to have type 1 flotation devices for everybody. You have to have a throw for somebody if they fall off. I have a hook and stuff like that. We don't typically go too far out. We stay right in the bay, and we're usually fishing about 20 yards from islands and stuff like that. We're not 20 miles out in the middle of the ocean or anything like that. I'm not going to go out if it's too windy or if it's raining and stuff like that either. So, you know, I don't look to push the envelope as far as the weather goes or put anybody in harm's way as far as, you know, this is for fun and stuff, and nobody's going to have fun if we go out there and there's 2 foot of chop and it's blowing, and, you know, it's no fun that way. So, hopefully, you know, we'll get out there around 8, we'll leave here around 7:45, 8 o'clock. We'll get out there, you know, probably around 8:45 and have a 4-hour trip and have a bite to eat at the dock when we get back, and head on in around 2.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you. sorry, I can't help myself. He said a 4-hour trip, not a 3-hour tour. So I think that's a little. And also I would love to be in Mr. Walker's class because I think this sounds phenomenal. And I recall, I believe I was on the school committee when you did. the
I was gonna
project with
say, I
them.
Miss Parks, I believe, are the
Yeah.
only two familiar faces here from the last time. right?
Yeah,
Was
and
Basket
I'm
Commission.
actually really glad to see that this is happening again and you're working with the kids at the fishing pole. I mean, this is the state of Maine. I think this is fantastic. So
I
I
appreciate
say we
it.
take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Ms. Paquette.
If you're looking at the PDF, as Jake was referring to, the first two, let me just double check. I didn't get it right the last time. The first two are duplicates. So they're not two different trips. It's just a duplicate. Corey had submitted once, Mr. Walker, sorry, had submitted once, and then we needed some more information. So I think it got put in twice. So there's not 3 trips. There's only 2 for Mr. Walker.
There'll be 2 more in the spring, but we'll talk about those later.
Ms. Medina.
So I just want to say, I think this is an amazing opportunity. Right now, a lot of the youth, they're just stuck on their phones. They don't get to get out into nature and really appreciate the natural resources that Maine has to offer. But like you said earlier, a lot of kids don't get to have experience like this. They've been out of Lewiston. So it is something that, will stay with somebody forever and maybe inspire them to, want to continue doing it or something like that. So if it's okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the field trip.
Thank you.
We have a motion by Ms. Medina. Do we have a second? We have a second from Ms. Scott. Is there any discussion? I'm assuming that what we're going to do here is we're going to approve both trips, for Mr. Walker. Everybody understand? All in favor? That is unanimous.
Great. Well, I
Happy
appreciate it,
sailing.
everybody. And we'll let you know how it goes. If we got a keeper, we can share it.
Thank you.
If you note at the bottom of that PDF, there's a trip to Japan. That will come back to you. It's in the docket, but it will come back to you. We want to make sure the advisor can be here, and I don't think he anticipated it getting in. I'll own a piece of this. Cheryl was off today, and we had a few field trips come in from the from Karen's office because they go through steps of approval in our new process. And I asked Jeremy to include all of the field trips that came through today, and one of them was that. So we'll bring that back to you.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. Can we just ensure that we have the risk assessment packet and the safety policies and procedures with that when they come forward to us? Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is number 8. This is to receive and potentially vote on substitute pay rates. Mr. Superintendent.
I shared a memo with you about sub pay, and Executive Director Grant is asking me to also add nutrition sub pay rates. But really the groundwork for this, as we shared in the memo, is these adjustments are based on new negotiations and new rates of pay that exist in other areas. So again, to remain competitive and to have people on the right scale. And this came up in the past when we were looking at incentivizing long-term subs and things like that. And it was quickly encroaching on how much an ed tech gets paid to come to work every day. And so there's some nuances to that. And this proposed scale would remedy that concern. And I also want to share that there are 3 additional pieces, and I can send this to you. Food service substitutes, food service aides, and lunch monitors. Those are adjustments, and to look at going in food service substitutes from 1264 to 16, food service aides from 1340 to 16, and the lunch monitors from 1264 to 1375. And we can include that tonight, or if you'd like to see it and come back to it, just let us know. But I'll make sure you have it in your inbox.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody saw the recent articles in Portland about the potential of dropping an extra day of education because they can't seem to fill their staff. And I think this is a nationwide thing. It's something that we're seeing everywhere. So I'm in full favor of doing this. We need to have the substitutes. We need to have the ed techs. We need everybody. We need the lunch monitors. And so I just want to say that I fully support this.
Mr. Boklon.
Thank you. Jake, could you share the pay that other districts are giving their people?
I actually don't have that in front of me, Bill. I don't know if you looked at comps through that negotiation process, not that you necessarily have them with you.
So from a comp standpoint, we are kind of up in the class. We do have different levels, but the big thing that why you're seeing this now and not parked in with the personnel policies is because we had to finish negotiating those contracts to see where we were on an hourly rate basis. And so, you know, this kind of brings that up to that $16 an hour rate for the substitutes and then kind of makes the other things more competitive. So from kind of a comp standpoint, again, I don't have it right in front of me, but we are pretty competitive with this rate. Yep.
Thank you. A couple more. Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't we have an incentive already that a substitute teacher that works so many days per month receives a bonus stipend?
We do. Yeah. We're trying to encourage our subs to take on roles. Last year, we had some subs who they were registered and they might work 1 or 2 days a month. And then with the incentive program, we did see an increase in the number of days people would take up because they had an incentive for that.
Thank you. This is one of the few areas that's in my wheelhouse. Again, I started in 1975 in education as a sub making $20 a day. And I'm still over the river substituting because I want the flexibility and freedom of not working every day. And it's a little over 5 times that. It does for the people here take a special person to become a substitute. We will attract more of a field, but it's you have to have some knowledge of kids, number one, of education, number two, and really it's not a job for everyone. I'm certainly very much aware of the substitute shortage over the river as well as here, and I enthusiastically support that this will further drain the substitutes in Auburn as an example and have them come over here. But a good sub, a good ed tech, a good nutrition support person, they're worth their weight in gold. And normally I'm a person that kind of pinches a nickel till the buffalo craps, as the saying goes, but I really support that we find money in the budget here to pay our people fairly and adequately, and I'm certainly all in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
That's a great line.
Ms. Parks.
I don't even know how to follow that. I know in the past we've had, when we'd like outsourced getting subs and different things, we had some struggles with getting adequate subs on any given day. Have we had any days since the school year started where we've been short on subs and we've had to pull from ed techs, or have we been covered?
I think in today's climate, someone's being pulled somewhere every day. But I will say our sub pool is strong, and we want it to be a little stronger, which is part of why we're bringing this before you. But we're also seeing some very good subs, kind of like the Pauls of the world, who have teaching and learning experience, who are willing to contribute where they can, but not be, contracted to it every single day. So there are still shortages. Actually, Fatuma, one of the big things that she does is she chases and tries to get subs oriented to the teaching and learning environment as just a piece of her pile of tasks. But I think we have in our sub pool upwards of, don't quote me on this, but 300 subs listed. And of those, we're filling probably 80 a day. And some of our better subs have actually become certified to become teachers. And so that's part of that pathway of support to make sure they can get to their full cert and keep it. But we had some fantastic subs that have done long-term roles who have done numerous long-term roles like major surgeries or someone who has a serious illness or maternity leave. We've got some really good subs that fill those roles, and we'd like to keep them around.
Mr. Beaufort.
Thank you. Finally, from me, I think one of the most brilliant things that we've done was to incorporate the notion of building subs. I wish we could do more of that. It's again, a person that's going to show some dedication, a person that's familiar with the operations of the school. Every school system should do that. So that was just brilliant.
Anyone else comments on this? I would take a motion. Ms. Eames,
I'll make a motion to approve the memo about sub pay. And including, as amended, including the nutrition and lunch monitors, et cetera.
have a second?
I'll second that.
Ms. Parks seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? So moved. I'm going to go off script just a little bit here. We have a gentleman who joined us right just as we started, who being new to the district, I don't think he actually realized that he was part of the consent agenda. This is Matthew Wilshire. Is it Wilshire? He is our new music band. There we go. So welcome. Just, it's nice to be able to put a face to the name, and if you'd like to say something, I think it would be appropriate.
Well, first off, it's wonderful to meet all of you. I want to say I've had a great first week at the school. I feel blessed to have this position. I've already met some great kids, great faculty here, and I'm excited to help grow the program and see what we have this year. We've already got concerts planned, and really getting into work already with some of the students. So it's going to be really exciting, and I'm really excited for what we're doing this year.
So just because we're in public comment, I'll put forth the challenge to you.
Yep.
I'm a strong believer, as I believe the committee is, in the arts, in supporting the arts. And so love for you to have the opportunity to take this program wherever you see fit, but we want to grow it and see how many kids we can get engaged with just expression of all kinds. So the fact that you were able to join us as highly recommended as you were, we're excited about what you might be able to do.
And I'm also excited to not only grow this program, because I do see it growing in the next few years, both with the middle school numbers I've already seen, and talking with the middle school and elementary school teachers. It seems that numbers from the COVID era have sort of normalized, and that the program is going to be growing with the new facilities we have there, beautiful new art wing. I think that's going to draw in a lot of students, and I already have ideas for next year on how to reach other students who may not already play an instrument and give them access to the music side of the art wing.
I think we're all looking forward to your great success.
Thank you.
I know my own kids all were part of the band, and I know many of the people that are here on the committee also had students previously that were in the band, and it's definitely an enrichment that when it's not there is sorely missed. So thank you.
Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you all at our concert. Thank you.
Thank you for your indulgence about us going off script there a little bit, but I think that's so important for us. It's another one of our pathways. The next item on the agenda is report from the school committee chair. I don't have a lot. We are currently working to close out the last of the contract bargaining agreements that we have. We're working with the administrators currently. That is not finished, but it's going quite well. I don't know if we got back to the fact that we have finished the ed tech. The ed tech contract is initialed. It is not permanently signed, but we're right there. It's all good. I think that that'll wrap up. Once we wrap up the administrators, that wraps, I believe Bill's shaking his head that will wrap it up. Just, we only had 6, 5. So it's all good. We're really making progress. I think that having those contracts settled is really helpful from a morale standpoint for the staff. Also, we are involved with facilities. We got a couple of things that we'll talk about when we get to the subcommittee stuff. But so far, things seem to be moving along. It's a good start to the year, I hope. And then we'll just keep our fingers crossed it continues. The next item would be a report from superintendent.
So I'll share a few things. We have been in contact with the high school by our student reps, and they are going through a process to get both the junior and the seniors back to join us. Hopefully that will be very soon. Also behind the scenes, worked on the committee formation for the high school graduation and pathways. So I have some school staff committed, a community member that's interested, and I'll be getting some dates out. But I wanted to refresh her, who was it here that definitely wanted to try to sit on that? I knew Elizabeth, the pathway and graduation subcommittee. Okay, so Janet, Elizabeth, good. And I wanted to share about the McMahon project. Behind the school, there's additional spaces being put in. We've run into a snag that is in part a delay of other organizations beyond our control, up to and including having it take 6 weeks to get someone out to the job site to look at an existing telephone pole that is supported by a cable, which is in the throughway of the parking lot. And so they can't pave there. We have it kind of blocked off right now so that things can be taken care of. CMP won't touch it until there's a formalized easement, which according to the email back and forth today between Heather and I at the city, we just have to sign off on it. So that should go tomorrow morning. And until they can get to it, they will not be able to move that cable, put in the pole to support it, and finish the paving. And so we're excited for that project to be finished. It's one of those things that just kind of popped up, and you just wonder why things aren't done yet. Sometimes it's those little details. Another thing we're looking at internally, just so you're aware, is around our policy and with purchasing. We're seeing, I'll try to explain this. Of course, we have a bid process. These are public funds. So when we're doing a project, we put it out to bid and things come back. Well, part of what happened in the pandemic is you were able to bypass certain bid processes because there was no supply, no labor, no parts, no equipment. And so because of the pandemic, it was permissible to bypass certain things. Of course, we still brought those things to you, like the middle school heating project, things like that, nothing that you're not aware of. But now we're starting to see other projects pop up where we're looking at pricing, and we're looking at a process of an organization or a company asking us to commit to the process for engineering, drafting, things like that. So we do, and those are within reasonable thresholds. But then we're seeing them come back with big project dollars and saying, sign here and we'll get started. Well, to me, there's a two-step there, and I feel a little bit like I don't think it's intentional, but I feel like it's a bit of a workaround feel that some corporations have figured out. If you sign on to this piece, we'll come back with a number, we'll just start the project. I'm not comfortable with that. So you'll see some projects coming before you over the next month, maybe 2, that have some pretty big ticket items on them. Now we have the funding for them in Easter. So that's part of the challenge of this, is it's time sensitive. Contractors know that. And so I want to be a good steward of the funds available to Lewis Public Schools. So you'll see some things before you that we've already worked to vet. Probably Bruce will share some more at the facilities update, but I just wanted to share that out loud as just part of an update, nothing too formal, but we're looking at some of these practices and saying, I want to tap the brakes before we spend $4 million, before we spend $1.7 million on something that 6 months ago was going to be 1.1. And so we're trying to make sure we're having good communications and following through, but just wanted you to know that some of the projects you think that might be happening, we're tapping brakes on because some of the things in process and purchasing and procurement don't quite add up. We want to make sure we're doing it right. But that's it for me for now.
Next item on the agenda is a report from the city council rep, Ms. Scott.
Thank you. We did have a city council meeting last week. We had 2 workshops. We had a presentation from the Good Food Council of Lewiston, Auburn, which was a great presentation, and it worked well, which was one with what was on our agenda last Tuesday, where we voted our first reading and approval for a new beet ordinance and chicken ordinance. So I see some smirking, but I think it's important. And I think that the Good Food Council is working towards that end as well, along with some of the new legislative laws in the state of Maine, allowing more, this is for food security, allowing more options for people that live in an urban environment to be able to do more gardening, chickens, those sorts of things. We also had a presentation from our Public Works Department on an overview of our city parks, and we'll be looking further into that, looking at use to the parks, cost of fixing the parks, keeping the parks up. It's quite a conversation that we'll be having moving forward, and that was our first presentation on that. We also started a new program that evening, which is called the Lewiston Leads presentation, where each city councilor is choosing somebody in their ward that they feel is a leader in our community to encourage others to be community leaders. We've each taken alternative meetings to do this. I did have my first one last week, and I chose Josh Nagin, who was a planning board member, also in charge of the farmers market, Androscoggin Land Trust, and Sunnyside Park. So I thought he was a really good choice. We approved several special amusement permits. We also had our first reading and first passage of the business license ordinance for the homeless shelters. The moratorium was extended, and I will explain that I did vote in favor to extend the moratorium. After saying that I would never vote on the moratorium, I did that with the preference prior to saying that in the nature of the good work that's been done, the work that was done by the ad hoc committee, the work that was done by our planning department, all the work that's been done on the city level, that I would vote in favor to extend it, but it's only extended once the final passage of the ordinance is in place. So it's not extended for another 180 days. It's extended until that ordinance is in place. And I believe we'll be having that meeting that's coming up on the next week on the 20th. And the planning board is meeting tonight to go over some of the zoning and land use codes around a homeless shelter. Also, I wanted to report on the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council. They met last week for their first meeting to discuss what they're going to be focusing on to start their tenure. Most of them are all new and very enthusiastic. It was a great meeting, and they want to focus on mental health in our community and in our schools. They did ask me to reach out to Member Parks, also Officer Philippon, and maybe we can have some conversations around what happens in our community already, how we can work on that. But one of their big projects that was announced today was that they're going to be looking at art around mental health. And they've put out the word for artists in the community, whether they're students or adults, to bring in art about mental health. And what they want to do is make it, instead of just keeping it at the high school, maybe making it a rolling display at all the schools, so that all the schools can be talking about mental health. And I was very impressed, especially after the COVID years and what everything we've all went through as adults. These kids have a much better handle about mental health and what's happening in the schools around mental health than I've heard any adult speak of in the last couple of years. I was quite impressed, and I'm looking forward to working with them and building this further. That's all I got for now. Oh, and we do have a special meeting tomorrow night, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Next item on the agenda is report from the student reps. They're not here, so we'll skip on that one. The following item is update from school committee subcommittees. Mr. Bopal.
Yes, at the last meeting, Member Hurd mentioned that day meetings were not really the best for her to attend and that she had some people that were constituents that wanted a voice, and that's what we're here for. So I'd like to thank Ms. Williams, who figured out that we can have a curriculum meeting an hour ahead. And the next one is scheduled at our next meeting, September 26th. And it seems when I first joined the committee, that's what they did. Am I not mistaken? It was done.
No, we met. Did we meet before then? It seems like it was so long ago, virtual.
Yeah, we would meet like 4 to 5 or 4:30 to 5:30. I think this past year was unique because of all the work that was being done. But I think, definitely would, when that work will continue and those that can attend, great, but the meetings themselves. I sent the invite out, so for those of you who are on the committee will see that. And there's also an invite for the policy subcommittee that went out today as well.
Sorry, what subjects are on tap this year for review?
Still working on that. We have to kind of regroup from the work that you all did last year and think about our plan moving forward. We can discuss that at the committee meeting if you'd like. You've accepted it. The 26th is the curriculum meeting. And next week is the 21st. I sent out the invite for the policy subcommittee, and that was the one. No. I was panicking. I'm like, I think I put you on there.
Other subcommittee reports. Ms. Scott.
Thank you. On facilities, because I noticed Ms. Bowden had looked at me. Mr. Grant did say that last week when we met for facilities that we do need to start bringing back the finance committee meetings again. So we'll be getting some scheduling on that soon.
Okay. We did have a facilities committee meeting last week. Number of items, some that are some really big ticket items that we really need to, I think we need, as Jake said, we need to kind of put the brakes on them a little bit. One of them is a major project at the middle school to upgrade the air conditioning and heating equipment, ventilating equipment at both the auditorium and in the gym. It's in the gym. The unit itself will be on the cafeteria, but it's in the gym. That project was significantly higher this year than it was last year. So significant price increasing. So I think we need to really see if we can get a handle on that. There is the ongoing energy conservation project. Back, if you'll recall, we in cooperation with the city, we authorized an audit, investment grade audit by a company called JCI, which is Johnson Controls Incorporated. They've worked with the city. They've got theirs pulled together. They've pulled together a proposal for us. We are not quite ready to pull the trigger on that. That particular project ends up being $4.6 million. Should be paid for with energy savings over a period of time. But I think we need to, again, prioritize some pieces of it and break it down a little bit till we're more comfortable with moving forward with it. So those are two of the major components that we're working in, that and the purchasing policy piece, which I think is really important. There are some stipulations in the city charter about how monies can be spent. And I think that we need to make sure that we are not crossing any of those lines as well. As I said, negotiations is pretty well along. And that's all I have. Are there other committee reports I know we've been kind of in a little bit of a summer hiatus, so assuming things will get cranked up again. Anyone else? Mr. Bopal.
Bruce, I believe, and I don't want to put you on the spot, there was information discussed about a phase 3 on the improvements at Lewiston. Do you have anything on that?
I don't. There was some real preliminary discussion. As many of you will recall, when we started looking at the expansion and for the high school, the initial phase 1 was to improve the parking and the traffic flow around the high school. And that ended up being significantly more expensive than by the design of it than we could afford. So it's very much a scaled down version, phase 1. Phase 2 was the actual expansion, and that was voted on and approved by the voters in November of 2019, just pre-COVID. The construction was completed during that COVID timeframe, and they've moved in now, and hopefully our new band director, Mr. Wilshire, will be able to make absolute fantastic use of it. I couldn't be more excited. Phase 3, which has always been out there, was to create a performing arts venue. We're one of the few high schools in this whole area that doesn't have a place where we can get together and enjoy concerts or even just get together. The only really place of assembly in the high school is the bleachers in the gym. And as we all know, that's not really very conducive from an auditory standpoint for anything. The space at the middle school has been up and down. There were some old issues in the last couple of years that are being addressed. That's part of what the other project is. The project there is about. So there was some initial discussion about trying to put a new committee together to move forward with phase 3. The original approach for phase 3 was to build a 1,000 seat first class auditorium performing arts venue. It's going to be a lot of money, but it was incorporated into the design when we did the existing addition. The elevator was placed such that it could service both venues and the high school as well. So there is some very, very early discussion started. I was approached by a couple of folks who were originally on the committee about it. I have, between negotiations and everything else, I haven't been able to really get that rolling, but I will keep you updated on that. I do think that it's, as the final piece, if we go back to the 1973 plan, there was supposed to be an auditorium back in 1973. And it was cut along with a pool to save about $1 million on the construction. The art wing, which we've just built, was about $13 million. And probably the Performing Arts Center, by the time we get it built, will cost another 25 to 30. So saving that $1 million was certainly a good investment. And I'll leave it at that. But we are working on trying to get that committee back rolling again. Anyone who's interested in working on that, I would love to have your assistance, and I'll take note of Mr. Beauparlon. If there are others, certainly reach out to me, and I will make sure we talk about it on an ongoing basis, because it's not going to just happen. It's going to be a significant reach for us, for the community and everyone. So, but I think if we're going to continue to push these new pathways that we continue to talk about for students, the performing arts has to be a part of it. And you really can't embrace the performing arts if there's no space. Just plain and simple.
Thank you, Bruce. I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you, Paul, for asking. Any other subcommittee reports? Seeing none. We'll move down to item 14, which is community announcements. Ms. Medina.
So I just wanted to let everybody know that on Wednesday, September 21st, 2022, from 4:30 to 6:30, there's going to be a Pine Street Community Block Party, Webb's Market, Lewiston Summer and Films, Healthy Neighborhoods, Healthy Homeworks in the city of Lewiston, and Community Credit Union have come together to throw this awesome event. There's going to be some basketball, National Guard, Humvee, Mr. Drew and his Animals 2, street performers, face painting, all that good stuff. And maybe it's a good time to do some tabling. Some of us to get, the word out there. But yeah, I just wanted to share that.
The date again, Ashley?
It's Wednesday, September 21st.
Ms. Parks.
I mentioned it at the last meeting, but I'll mention it again. This coming Saturday, the 17th, is the Lewiston Area Public Health Committee is hosting the recovery rally in Kennedy Park from we changed it a couple times. It's either 10 to 2 or 11 to 2. But there'll be more coming out about that. Miss Scott thinks it's 11 to 2. I just know on the committee, we went back and forth on times. It probably is 11 to 2. And we'll have children's events, face painting, a dunk tank, free lunches, all kinds of stuff, and everyone's welcome.
Anyone else? Mr. Superintendent.
Couple of quick ones. There's going to be a community vaccine clinic on the 23rd of September, connected to Kennedy Park. We're working with some partners to try to get the word out for those interested in a vaccine, a COVID vaccine. And also there's an alumni dinner coming up on the 23rd also that evening here at the high school. And just so you know, if you're an alumni, you're invited. Homecoming is back and there's going to be a dance and all those things. So it should be an exciting event, but the goal of the alumni dinner is just to start getting alumni back together and start building back in the tradition. Friday the 23rd. And I can get you more information if you'd like, but they're sharing it out around Facebook and things like that at this point. I don't know what my job's going to be at that event yet, but I've been told that there's plans for me. So we'll see. I'm not actually a Lewiston alumni. So who knows what they'll have me doing.
Wouldn't be the dunk tank.
It's starting to get cold this time of year.
Is there any update on that, on the homecoming thing? I know there were.
I mean, there's been selling shirts, raising money. And so I know, talking to students, they're looking for dresses and, suits and all that kind of stuff to wear to make it more of like a semi-formal type event. Something we haven't done in a long time that many of us have been very much in favor of, and it's time. And so they have a whole week of events from, wear your class color to, I think they're doing a blackout or a blue out on one of the days where everybody wears a certain colors. It's really got good energy behind it. And so we're excited to have that back. It looks like Janet may have more.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say they did announce today on the various social media pages that the entire week, the 19th leading up to the Saturday, the homecoming dance and game. Is that on Saturday? Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, there is a different theme every single day for the students and the faculty at the high school leading up to homecoming. So, and the middle school as well. Okay. Yeah. So yes, September 19th. So starting Monday. Yep.
Great. Anything else? Sounds like we've got some energy going here, which is for the start of the year is the way to go. Mr. Scott. The next item on the agenda is a future agenda item. And Ms. Bowden, you said something?
Thank you. Yeah, I had a constituent reach out this since our last meeting, asking about basic home finance classes offered in our schools. Basically looking to see if we're teaching kids in the middle school age up through high school about home finances, about budgeting, about loan interest, things to that nature. I couldn't agree more. I think it's super important. So I did pass this along to Member Hurd because she's on the curriculum committee. And I'm hoping that that could be brought up as a class that we could start incorporating as young as 6th grade. If kids can't handle money, it affects us all. That's a direct quote from this constituent, and I couldn't agree more. So it's I think it's well past time to start taking a look at that.
So I'm on the curriculum committee, and it is state mandated, and it is in the curriculum, and it will be even more so as of exactly. So it's there and needs to be.
Okay, Ms. Scott?
I just had a question. When are we going to see our student rep joining us?
I'm hopeful, actually was hopeful to be by now. I don't know if the junior rep from last year is returning. The availability was a problem. And so I've asked Principal Radke to get us 2 new reps, or if that person can make it. I did shift the criteria a bit because I don't think we were, during the times of pandemic, being there present in person was kind of less of a part of the conversation. And not that I think it excludes all students, but I think we had a run even just prior, or as we were in the pandemic, with students who were very active, which is good, but not able to make most meetings. And I think we have to strike a balance. So I did ask him, as he's recruiting with his team, to make sure that students who are showing an interest are also likely to be mostly available. I don't want to exclude kids, but if the reality is, if you're a 3-sport athlete and you work 20 hours a week, this probably isn't the gig for you. And so I want to be upfront with kids about that.
Mr. Bopal?
Thank you. 3 things, 2 of them I don't know where to fit in. So if it's inappropriate, hit the gavel on me and I'll keep quiet. First of all, on the Japan trip, I need to make sure we have enough lag time between the proposal and the time. We're not talking about a day trip to Casco Bay. We're talking about some significant air travel. Again, one that I was indirectly associated with, never left Lewiston. The company that was sponsoring it went bankrupt in the middle of the trip. And unfortunately, I have some horror stories, so I'm really on pins and needles on that. Secondly, and I don't know if this is appropriate here, but I do love the meeting here. Is this something that maybe we can do in the future if the hall is not being used?
I think it's actually a great question. So what we've talked about with Director Callahan and the staff here is they have busy seasons around the holidays, definitely in the spring when the students have more experience and they host more banquets and events and things like that. So what we're trying to do is have some meetings here, avoid those busy spells for them. And when things cool off a little bit, the multi-purpose room at the high school, the blowers don't run because it's not hot. So we can actually hear each other. So we're going to explore that space. And also, we've got some principals that are saying, I'd really love to host a school committee meeting. And we used to do that. And so I'd like to get back into a place where we have a rotation that, even if it's over a 2-year window, that we have a meeting in each school's location so we can see the student work, see the space, maybe have a look at things that might be on a project list and go from there.
The meetings are well publicized in the paper, but if we're going to do that, we got to make sure that people know where it's going to be. So keep up the work on that. And finally, Jake, how's the start of the year been going? Other than transportation and.
Yeah, well, we have, so yeah, there's disruptions, there's shortages. But I will say, and I feel like I speak for everyone, at least I've talked to and seen as I've visited schools and seen buildings, the energy is really good, really, really good. We did a kickoff event. I don't know if we've seen you since we did that or not, but we did a kickoff event at the high school, gave people light breakfast, and we talked about just some themes this year and focusing on relationships and instruction, and that every kid that walks into our schools, every single space, every single kid is a future graduate, and trying to set that stage that we that's the perception we're building. And I think that's a perception of hope and a progress and growth, and trying to squeeze out some of the stereotypes of what people may think kids can or cannot do. But I think we started off on a good note, and I'll publicly say thank you to Karen, Sue, and Bill, because that didn't happen without a lot of behind the scenes things, from facilities to curriculum. We had 125 new teachers at our staff orientation. That's a big lift to make sure that all those people have some support. And we've built in things that we've never had before. Some optional meetings if you're just curious about where you should be in curriculum and what are the dates coming up next month. So we've built in these pieces that I think will help facilitate people in their pathway towards full certification, or just support if they're new to Lewiston, with some just open opportunities to stay involved and connected. But really, our folks in our buildings, they're doing the work, and kids are behaving thus far, and things are going pretty well. I really think that there's a positive climate right now, but I also think that we have to be mindful of that positive climate and make sure that we continue to recognize people, continue to support people, and really keep drawing good lines with students so that we see positive environments.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And I couldn't be more supportive of that, but I guess the $64,000 question is, what's been the reaction to our cell phone initiative?
So it's being implemented in steps, and but really the feedback hasn't been too bad. The high school is trying to take the approach of reminders and spaces, and that's going to take time to transition. But it hasn't been a battle, and kids have seemingly been more mindful. But I'm not going to say it's been in all spaces like it's locked down, because it's not. It's better, I think, at the middle school, but it's really the best so far in the elementary schools, where last year it was a major problem. It is a much tighter policy, if you will, where people just say you just can't have it. And I think the off and away piece is a much more powerful tool. But we haven't seen too many problematic situations connected to phones at school just yet. But I still think it's going to take some time to get to where we want to be.
Ms. Bowden.
Thank you. So I just, since the cell phone topic was brought up, I just want to share some feedback from my own children, one in the middle school, one in the high school. My middle school child said it's basically just like last year. And she doesn't go on her phone anyway during the school day, so it's really no different. My high schooler, though, was pretty grumpy with me for the first week of school, because she has study hall. And especially like, the first couple days of school sitting in study hall, they were not allowed to take out their cell phones, and she had absolutely nothing to do but stare at a desk for the entire period. So she did ask me, she's like, can you just bring that up? I'm like, listen, this is like, it says in the policy, like it's basically up to the teacher, in the high school level, if it's appropriate or not. So I don't even know where to go with that one, but I guess in a study hall setting, maybe the teachers at the high school could just take a look at what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate.
There are books that exist.
No, there are books that exist, but the first week of school, when they're not sure. Sure, absolutely. But when students aren't really sure what's going on, and it's their first day, and then they're in a study hall with nothing to look at, like it was interesting. So that was my only feedback on the cell phones.
The study hall question has come up, and I believe that some allowances have been made, but they are not allowed, at least in the intent of the implementation, to leave the study hall with the phones and the AirPods and things like that. So that was part of that classroom area related discretion.
Ms. Hurd.
Thank you. I have two things. So one, my daughter started pre-K last week. And in her take-home packet that I received, her pre-K teacher sent a little note home that I think I shared with you, Jake, that I think we should try and roll out in all of our schools. And it's just a little note that says handle with care. And it says, if your family is experiencing difficulties at home, I would like to provide additional support at school. I understand you are not always able to share details, and that is okay. If your child is coming to school after a difficult night, morning, or weekend, please text using the Talking Points app or email me. quote unquote handle with care. This will let me know that your child may need extra time, patience, or help during the day. And I thought this was amazing because we all know that sometimes your child just wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, or you've had a rough weekend or a busy weekend, or things are going on at home that's outside of your control. And I think it would be great for teachers to kind of get a heads up, maybe if something's going on. So when your child comes in and maybe they're out of their norm or not their normal behavior or is acting out in one way or another, teachers understand that it's not just poor behavior. There's a reason behind it. So that I thought that was really great. And then the other thing was the avoid, deny, and defend. I'm having some parents question if it's possible to get a script of some sort or something of what you will be discussing with our children, so they can also discuss the same things at home. So everybody's on the same page, especially the younger kiddos, which I don't know if it's everybody pre-K to seniors, or if it's just a select group of students, but just so anxieties can be maintained and so forth.
So I just, for those watching or if those asking, that's being built and it's intentional to who might be involved. And we won't do that until we share out to parents what that makeup looks like. Some of the younger age, I'm not saying this is a decision at this point. Bill and the team have been doing a lot of work with this on a very global scale. It may not actually be worth certain kinds of practice with certain ages of kids. And it's more about the adult preparation and mindset and thinking. So, but there's definitely more to come on that. And right now what we're doing, actually starting tomorrow with the administrative team, and then it will spill into staff meetings. Just that reminder of what is avoid, deny, defend, and having them thinking about the spaces they're currently in, if that changed from last year, in that mindset. And just having that reminder of the communication system that we'll be using. But that's adult only. So that's not training with students per se. But we'll get to
Thank you.
that. We'll get to that place where it's age appropriate.
Thank you.
Miss Eames, did you have something?
It's about the cell phones, if that's okay. I was wondering when you said it'll take some time, we're rolling it out. I guess I want to know a little more about that, because I thought we voted on a policy that was very clear, and I was hoping it would be just implemented from day one strongly, hard at first, and sometimes you let up later, but hard at first, like make it really clear. So I'm just curious if you could explain that a little bit further for the public and me.
Yeah, I think it's anytime you're trying to shift behavior, it takes time. When we're trying to start a school year with a positive climate to the best of our ability, we start with relationships and we start with talking about getting to know your students, and we don't start with, and here's all the things you can't do per se. But it does come, and it's again, the work is that it's being implemented. And I had a lot of feedback, especially at the 9 through 12 level, about how quickly we will lose our kids if we just walk around with a hammer on this. And I think it's that fine line of taking the reminders approach and asking kids to make the right choice in the right spaces. And so I support that effort. I tried to speak to that when you adopted the policy, that especially at the 9 to 12 level, it would be like that workplace environment where we start with reminders and try to make sure students are getting the message over time. But in the schools where they're supposed to be off and away, for example, I got some feedback in the middle school. It wasn't as tight as I was thinking it would be. So I've already had conversations with some people around, reminding folks that that is the expectation. I think if the expectation is not that they're off and away like at the high school, it's harder to navigate that policy. But they are doing it. I've witnessed it myself, and I've seen kids go and put it away when they're on their way to the bathroom. But yeah, it's when I say it's going to take time, I think it's with high school age students, it's definitely going to take time.
Ms. Scott?
I'll just add to that a little bit. We did touch upon it with the Youth Advisory Council. They were all aware. I readily admitted that I voted in favor for it. I was waiting for a huge backlash with a room full of 16 high school students, and I did not receive that. As a matter of fact, they said that they were aware. They're not all happy about it, but they also talked about how that's part of the mental health thing. And they recognize that. I didn't bring anything up. They're the ones that said, you know, sometimes some of our mental health issues in our school evolves around the cell phones. And so I think, you know, that's a good thing right there. The kids need to recognize they're the ones that need to be holding themselves accountable to how they're using these devices and these electronics. So I was really happy to hear that. So I think that it's not going to be, you know, right away, but I think that there is a role. I think the kids are hearing it and knowing it. And I'm hoping that they grab onto that more and use that.
Ms. Medina?
So for future agenda items, I think it's really important for us to address the vaping and smoking problem that's going on in the high school. When I was reading through the comments of the feedback that we got from the public on the cell phone policy, there was a student that said that there's a huge problem, and I've heard it from parents, teachers, students, and it's true, and they're only getting younger. Kids are getting access to this, and also, and I know there's already a policy in place, but I'm also curious to know, do we have data on like how many students are getting caught doing this? And I want to know like what happens after, what conversations are being had. I think it's really important, and I hope that we can put that on the agenda soon.
Anyone else on future agenda items? I had one that I'll just throw out just to get it, maybe a conversation started. Jake and I have talked about it for years. Many school districts had driver's ed available. We have a whole bunch of the students at LRTC. The only way that they're going to be successful in promoting their craft that they learn there is if they can get to work. The limited public transportation situation in this area, much less the busing whole thing. I would like to see the district reestablish at least some, even if it's a small program, to allow students to get their driver's license. I recently hired a 2022, I guess it was a 2022 graduate of LRTC. And he just in the last couple of weeks got his license because he could not afford to get it in the private sector until after he started working. His dad was so supportive of him, he was bringing him to work every day and then coming and picking him up at the end of the day, which was a huge challenge for both of them. I've never seen a kid more excited about something that when he said he didn't have his license because he just couldn't afford it, I just kind of, okay, I'm having had my driver's license since I turned 15. That's centuries ago but it just is surprising to me that there is no programming. And some of it will also feed into this whole approach of, the CDLs. I know Region 9 has a CDL program that's up in Rumford. They're actually able to get those kids CDL. And with the bus driver shortage and the truck driver shortage and everything that's nationwide, I wouldn't say that it's the greatest career, but some people just thrive on it. And it certainly could create a stepping stone, a path for those kids to see something outside of Lewiston, Auburn. So I'd like to at least investigate what it would take to reestablish a driver's ed program. Anything else, Mr. Bokala?
Mr. Chairman, did we have a program before? When did it end and what were the reasons? Do you have any knowledge on that?
I'm not up to any speed on the specifics, and maybe it hasn't been around for a while, but Ms. Park seems to have some insight.
I'm going to age myself. My freshman year in high school, I did driver's ed through the school, but that was in the early 90s. So I don't know how more recent that is, but in the early 90s, there was driver's ed through the school.
By the early 2000s, it was gone.
Well, in the early 60s, when I took it, it was there at the high school. So So there must be a gap in there somewhere, so. But I do think that it is, it is certainly in this state, it almost is something, and and the fact that maybe you can't afford a car. When you go to work, sometimes that's part of your job. And if you have that driver's license as a piece of that, it's a real asset. And it's how people are going to get ahead and progress. So I'm hoping we can do that. I'm not thinking it's going to happen immediately, but something to think on for sure as we talk about pathways. Anything else? Next item on the agenda is agenda item number 16. It's to enter into executive session to discuss negotiations in accordance with 1 MRSA 405D. I would need a motion to go into executive session. So moved by Ms. Bowden, seconded by Ms. Hurd. All in favor? So moved. We're in executive session. Austin, I guess you can shut us down and.